Now we're going to talk about the listening questions themselves. Really, we can group them into 3 categories: general information, specific information, and inference. It's good to know what sorts of questions you'll be tested on before going into the test. This way, everything will seem much more familiar, and you'll be able to jump right in. Let's talk about general information questions first. What I mean by this is that some questions on the listening test ask about the main ideas of what you've heard. For these types of big picture questions, think about each listening passage as a whole. What was the passage mainly about? What was being discussed? Here's an example. We're going to listen to a part of a conversation in Listening Part 3. Note that we'll also be using this conversation to discuss the other 2 types of questions a little later in the video.
Enya, how are you? I haven't seen you at work much these days.
Oh, I've been busy. Actually, I've got a lot on my plate at the moment, and I'm sorry, what was it you asked about?
I just asked how you were. You seem pretty stressed out, if you don't mind me saying so. It's none of my business why, but last year I was where you are now. So I think I can make a few suggestions if you'd like.
Sure. I still have to deal with the stress of balancing work and school, but I wouldn't mind some suggestions.
Of course. Are you doing something physical, like getting some exercise? You may think that you don't have time, but trust me. If you schedule time to take a yoga class or go for a run a few times a week, you'll feel much better. Me, I play baseball every Tuesday.
Funny you should mention yoga. I signed up a couple weeks ago, but haven't been able to make it there yet.
Just half an hour will do it, but 45 minutes is even better. You'll feel happy because of the chemicals your body will release. You'll be able to think more clearly. You'll be able to sleep better.
I can't remember the last time I got a good night's sleep. I've just been so worried about work and my courses and, everything.
Are you eating well? That's something else that will help. You're probably thinking you don't have time to make proper meals, but again, make the time.
Alright, now here's a question about general meaning. Remember that in Listening Part 3, you don't read the question, you only hear it. What does the man do? This question is dealing with the overall theme of the conversation, not any one specific part. Throughout the conversation, what is the man doing? He's offering advice to the woman about how to relieve stress. Therefore, A, provide advice, is the correct answer. Now let's talk about questions dealing with specific information. These are sort of the opposite of general meaning questions. Specific information doesn't apply to the overall situation, but rather to specific points. This is where keywords come into play. If you listen for keywords, you'll often have a better idea of what sort of information might be required for specific information questions. Here's an example from the conversation you just heard. If you'd like, you can go back now and replay the conversation. Okay, here we go. What does the man suggest will improve the woman's sleep? You might recall that partway through the conversation, the man suggested that doing an exercise like yoga could help the woman sleep better. Yoga is a type of physical activity, therefore B, doing more physical activity, is the correct answer. As you can see, the answer to this question was in a specific part of the passage. It was simply paraphrased from what you originally heard. On to the last category, inference questions. When you make an inference, you draw conclusions based on what you hear, using information you learned from the passage. For these questions, the answer will not be mentioned directly in the passage. You've got to be able to predict and draw conclusions about the situation. For example, look at this question from the passage earlier in this video. And remember, if you'd like, you can go back now and replay the conversation. What is likely true of the man? This is an inference question because the answer wasn't actually mentioned or paraphrased in the audio. But we can still figure it out by drawing some conclusions about the context. We know that the woman is stressed out, and the man is offering her advice on how to reduce her stress. Since this man knows a lot about reducing stress, it's likely that he used to be stressed out as well, but he learned how to calm down. In other words, he has learned how to relax. Therefore, D, he has learned how to relax, is the correct answer. One last thing about general information, specific information, and inference questions. We've been using listening part 3 as an example, but you should keep in mind that these types of questions will appear in all parts of the listening test. On the official test, though, you won't know which questions belong to which categories, so being aware of the categories beforehand can really help reduce your own stress. In the final video on listening strategies, we'll discuss some strategies for specific parts of the listening test.